Today we're going to talk about two more shortcuts to show triangles congruent, and this time we will deal not only with angles but mostly with angles. So we are going to add the angle side shortcut, and that means we have two pairs of angles that are congruent and one pair of sides. So much like in the other problems, I'm going to identify what I have. I have a pair of sides. I have a pair of angles. And I need to go look to see if I have anything like vertical angles or reflexive property in this picture. I have vertical angles here. They're always going to be congruent, so that is another pair of angles. And if I look here, I have two angles in this triangle that are marked up and a side that's marked up, and that side's not between the angles. So I'm going to put the side after the two A's. That exists here as well. This is an example of two triangles that are congruent using angle side. I have two pairs of corresponding angles that are congruent to each other. One because they were marked already, and one pair because we have vertical angles. I have a pair of sides that I know are congruent because they were marked both with one hash mark. And since that side that's marked with the hash mark isn't between the angles that are marked up in either triangle, I put the S at the end and we have angle side. If I look at this number 2, I have a pair of angles here with one mark, a pair of angles there with two marks, and then I see that these triangles overlap. They share a side, so I can put a little hash mark on there. Reminder, that's the reflexive property, which basically says that anything is congruent to itself. So this side is in both triangles. It's the same thing in both triangles, so it's congruent to itself. This marking is not between these two angles. It's not between these two angles, so I'll put my S right there. This is another example of two triangles that are congruent because of angle side. And it might be a good time to point out that now that I know these two triangles are congruent, I also know that the corresponding parts are congruent. So at the beginning of this unit, I told you the triangles were congruent. That's what told us corresponding parts are congruent. Right now we're looking at corresponding parts and seeing if that will tell us, using one of the shortcuts, in this case angle side, if the triangles are congruent. If we can say they are by the shortcut like we have here, the follow-up to that would be to say that the other angle pairs and the other side pairs are congruent. More on that later. Here I'm going to look. I have a pair of sides congruent, another pair of sides congruent. I have vertical angles there, so I have a pair of angles congruent. That pair of angles is not between the two sides, so I can put it here. And this is not one of our ways to show triangles congruent. One suggestion I will make when we get to the point where you don't know which shortcut you're looking for is to list all the possible shortcuts. And so far we have these four. We're going to add one below in a second. I don't have side. I don't have hypotenuse leg because I don't have right triangles. I don't have angle side because I only know that one pair of angles are congruent. And so the only possibility here to show these two triangles congruent using a shortcut would be side angle side. And you have two pairs of sides, yes. You have one pair of angles, yes. But the thought process is, or the question you ask yourself is that pair of angles between the two sides in each triangle? So, for example, is this angle that I've marked up between the two sides that I've marked up? The answer is no. that angle's between the two sides. It has no marking. This angle is between the two sides that are marked. But again, it's got to happen in both triangles. So side angle side doesn't work. We don't have enough information here. Like I said in the last lesson, these might look like they're congruent, and they might in fact be congruent, but right now, as it stands, we don't have enough information to use one of our shortcuts to say they are. The next one we're going to look at, or the last one, is angle side angle. This is a variation of angle angle side. You see the S is now in between the two A's, and that's because to have angle side angle specifically, we need the sides that are marked up to be between the angles that are marked up. So here I have angles. I have a pair of sides. And then hopefully you start getting comfortable with identifying vertical angles. There's a pair of vertical angles, so they're congruent. So that gives us another letter A. And so we need to decide, should I put the A here or should I put it here? Well, if I have angle side, then my side will not be between the two angles that are marked up. If I have angle side angle, it will be. So if I look at this marking, it does in fact fall between that marking and that one. This marking falls between that marking and that one. And so I'm going to put my letter A here and say I have the angle side angle shortcut. These two can easily be confused. Sometimes I'll do it myself. So the way to get better at identifying these is just to do practice. There's no secret here. Here I have a pair of sides. Here I have some vertical angles, so that means I have one angle. I've run out of things to mark up. I've run out of things that are marked up, and so I don't have enough information to show these triangles are congruent. Again, they might be congruent, so let's not say not congruent. However, I don't have enough information to use one of the shortcuts I know to say they're congruent, and so we'll just say not enough information. I'm going to continue the same process. I'm going to identify pairs. There's a pair of angles with one mark. There's a pair of angles with another mark. Look for reflexive property that exists right here. That side is in both triangles. And so now I'm asking myself, is the side between the two angle pairs? Is the side not between them? Well, you can see this side that I've marked up is between all of these circles I made. And so I'm going to put my S for my pair of congruent sides there. This is an example of angle side angle shortcut. So as ever, we want you to try some of these. There will be multiple choice problems for each of these 4 questions. You will decide which, if any, of the shortcuts apply that we talked about today, or if there's not enough information. So take your time on these, answer the questions, and then you will see the answers. And of course, if you get one or more incorrect, that's okay. Please do raise your hand and ask for help, and we can work on it with you. So here are your answers. Of course, remember, if you got one or more of them wrong and you don't really understand why, please raise your hand and ask for help. We would be glad to help maybe fix a mistake or re-explain one or both of these shortcuts. Please do make sure you do the practice, take your time on these, decide which, if any, shortcut applies. Today we're just focused on the 2 that we talked about today, so don't worry about choosing from the ones we talked about in the last lesson. As ever, if you need help, please do ask.